welcome, guys. Welcome to 2023, our very first Clubhouse session of the year. I've had a couple of weeks off, still doing a little bit of work here and there, but I've had a lovely time, and I hope you have had a fantastic downtime. And I don't think I've been so raring for a new year as I have with this one. And I think part of that is because I kind of have a real vision, a real plan. I've got some massive goals, so I'm incredibly excited. And we have got Martin Riley here, who is definitely a great friend now. We met through business, but he is a absolutely fantastic person, and somebody who I really admire, and who's definitely massively shifted the route of my businesses over the years, and he has really enabled me to grow. So I'm really excited. I wanted to bring Martin on here today because he is a coach and also an author. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to introduce myself. Remember, this is actually a Clubhouse on serviced accommodation. It's all about questions and answers around serviced accommodation, but serviced accommodation is a business. And inherently, I think sometimes we forget about some of the real business elements, and some of us might have strengths in, I don't know, numbers, some of us might have strength in marketing, but whatever it is, we need to have a business plan, and do those goals actually coincide? And that's why we've called this, Is Your Goal Worth Setting? So just a bit about me. I'm Emma Howitt. I run a company called Pureabodes, and I started in property about 4 years ago, completely brand new. I didn't have any knowledge other than, some basics. I didn't have any money either. So I started up a rent-to-rent serviced accommodation business, and I ran that for just over 3 years. And then I sold it. I obviously got massively educated. And then I'm really fortunate. Last year, I moved into development, and through a purchase lease option, I took over an old school and converted it into an apart hotel that's now been running for a few months. So that's been really exciting. We did have some excitements over Christmas with some slightly dodgy guests, but that's all fine. And now I'm really looking forward to plans for 2023. So yeah, so let's jump in. So as normal, guys, I'm going to have a chat with Martin for the next sort of half an hour or so. And if you have any questions, then please do plop them into the chat. And then at the end, we will invite people up onto the stage to join us and to ask some questions. So do take advantage of this, because Martin really is an absolute minefield of information. So yeah, we've named this, Is Your Goal Worth Setting? So welcome, Martin. How are you doing?
Really great. Thank you very much. Yes, very exciting year ahead for us both, and absolutely thrilled to be here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that Martin has really helped me with over the years is to take something very complex, which is my head, which results in my business as well. I'm so typically entrepreneurial. I'm like, yeah, I want to do everything, and I want to start a business every day. And then it's suddenly I've got all these businesses and I'm not really sure how they interlink. And Martin sits me down for a couple of hours, and just suddenly I then walk out with this clear vision, this clear picture of where I'm going, where my businesses relate to each other. And so that's what I absolutely have loved. Well, part of the time I've spent with you has been absolutely amazing. So let's just jump straight into it, Martin. Did you want to just do a brief introduction, actually? Sorry, before we start.
With pleasure. Yes, I'm a business and leadership coach. And the reason I do what I do is because so many business owners, small business owners, they're great at what they do, but they're not experts in business. And what I've seen, we know there's horrific failure rates for startups, but also more established businesses that have been going 3, 5, even 10 years. Often they're struggling far more than they should do. And we spend so much time at work. We put so much love, so much passion into what we do. What I saw was a real need to try and improve how well people ran their businesses and actually got good at business. And what my job is to do is try and speed up that process, because we don't have time. We're trying to run our businesses. We don't have time to read MBA manuals on business. And they're so complex anyway. I mean, I've read them and didn't really, well, I came out a little bit the wiser, but they're often talking about how do you run a global corporation, not a small business. So my job is taking the complex, making it simple, so people get much better at basic systems like business and leadership and life.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that. So really the reason I wanted to get you on here today was that we, you know, I don't know, some of you might be like I was last year. I didn't actually even look at my goals until sort of mid-February because I hadn't hit my goals. And so I thought I'd just extend the year. Whereas this year I've been much more organized. I'm really there. I was very accepting of what I achieved last year. And actually it is such a great process to go back over the year because you forget what things you really have achieved. So yeah, so I absolutely was thrilled to be able to go back over it. And now I've got these goals, and then it's kind of like that implementation. And I know when we had a conversation about, you know, how you can help people get their goals into place, you said something like, is your goal worth setting? And that like went boom. What did you mean by that as a sort of a way of kind of kicking off?
Great question. Well, as I said, because people are great at what they do, but not necessarily great at business, what they tend to do is work to their strengths. They know what they know, and they tend to set their goals around what they know they should be doing better. What they often miss is what are the areas I should be improving, because business is a system. And if you're only working on your strengths, you don't know what's going to catch you out. And what I've seen is as businesses grow, it takes 10 years to get really good at business, if you're lucky. And there's so many pitfalls and mistakes, some fatal along the way, that if you don't know the whole system of business, you can really miss something. So, for example, people tend to build a business based on their strengths. You know, some stereotypes, but salespeople are often great at selling. The stereotype is they hate being organized, their paperwork, their systems, their process, doing all of that backup. Or people have business, people-based businesses where it's all about the relationship, the client relationships, the team relationships. They tend to hate their numbers. They don't want to look at the numbers. They're terrified of them. And say product innovators who love the innovation tend to really underestimate the power of marketing and the need for the marketing because they think it's all about the product. So we tend to have our blind spots, our weak areas, and just focus on what we do best. So what I've tried to do is show people how to look at business and go, actually, there's a whole system. Now, if you look at that system and then decide where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, do a proper diagnosis, understand where you're at in that system, you can actually set much more meaningful goals.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Because it is so true, isn't it? So I was kind of thinking that a lot of people, so I help people on their property journey. I do some mentoring with Touchstone, and it's something I absolutely love. Is kind of because quite often, don't we, like you have helped with me, we're so in the kind of quagmire of things that we can't see the wood for the trees necessarily. But what I often find is people come into sort of their mentoring session and they'll be like, right, I want to either replace my income, or my goal is I want to get £10,000 a month. That's the general one. Everyone wants £10,000. I don't know what it is about this £10,000 a month, but everyone wants it. So it's kind of like, okay, so, you know, then we could break that down. Okay, well, that could relate to, let's say, if you want £10,000 a month, you can make about £700 to £1,000 per property generally on serviced accommodation. So that's, you know, maybe 12 to 15 properties that you need to look at. Well, then we have this kind of figure. How would you then sort of advise them to then sort of start being able to work in their business and then know where to start? Because it always seems to be quite a lot sort of top down, and sometimes when you're looking bottom up, they don't necessarily meet.
Yeah, really great question. So I think there's two parts to that. And the first is, I think people always first have to make sure they've got a sound business model before they even do their business planning. Because I've met so many businesses and frankly, nothing's quite working. And when we look at the business model, it's off. It's not well thought through. So if we talk about that first, and then I'll talk about actually once you've done that, how do you get into your business planning? So to look at the business model, there's three parts to that. The first is, what is it you're great at? What is it you're passionate about, do really well, that you do best, it gives you an edge? Now, having an edge means that it's hard for others to easily copy it. So that's the first thing. What is it that you really do that gives you that advantage? So, for example, for me as a coach, my background was in product design, which means I have huge experience making the complex simple. And you can't suddenly learn 20 years of design experience in doing that as a coach if you've never had that background. So that gives me a clear edge. And that's why I can create systems and diagrams and tools, because again, I've got 20 years experience doing that. So that's what my edge is. That's what I'm passionate about. The second thing is you've got to say, who's my audience? Who's my client? Who's my customer? And what's the problem I solve for them with my passion, with my edge? What's the problem I solve for them that they need, want, desire, and are willing to pay for? And how much will they pay for that? And I see a lot where that intersect doesn't match up. Someone's very passionate, but nobody actually wants that problem solved or won't pay the price they need to. So you've got to match those two up first, and there's an intersect. And then the third is actually doing some simple numbers. Whatever my core product is, how many of those would I have to sell in a week or a month or a year to make the kind of money I need to make for me to have a comfortable life, or at least cover my baseline costs? And it's surprising, but a lot of people, because they go, well, I sell all sorts of stuff. There are all sorts of different prices and products, etc. It's too complex to work out the maths. So I go, okay, well, if we just took an average, if we took one price, if I really forced you and said, is it £100 or £1 million? No, it's actually my average product's about £1,000. How many of those do you sell in a week, a month, or a year? So do some basic maths and go, okay, how many of those do I have to sell once I've built up? And do the three add up to make something that's actually genuinely achievable in a reasonable time frame?
I love it. I love it. So interestingly, because most of the people that we get on board, they're following already kind of like a business model. So obviously with serviced accommodation, in general, if we're going to take an average, it might be that we're looking at maybe a 2-bed flat or a 2 or 3 bed terraced house. It might be in a kind of in a city that's maybe got tourism, but also massive development growth. So it may be that they've got contractors and and tourists as well, that kind of so contractors in the week and tourists that kind of fill up the weekends. So obviously, when we're talking about what's your kind of edge, so we've kind of looked at what the audience is there, and we've kind of looked at how many you might need to sell. So when it comes to what you're great at, are you kind of looking at within that business what it is that you like? So for me, for instance, I absolutely love coming up with ideas. I absolutely love, I can see something not working and I can usually think of 10 new ways that it might work. But then that's where it starts to ebb away, because then any kind of implementation and stuff like that. So how does that kind of relate in what you're talking about when you've kind of maybe already got a model, or even maybe you're getting a franchise or something like that?
Yes. I mean, the idea of a franchise is that they've already kind of figured a lot of those things out for you. So you've got a template, and that's the great thing. But even still, you bring something very unique to that. I mean, with a franchise, as I say, in theory, what gives you edge should be in place. So I don't know with the ones you're talking about, what is it that those bring that actually the other competitors, the other offerings don't do so well? But it may be, say you didn't have a franchise, but it might be what you do is actually you create fabulous interiors that others don't do quite so well affordably. Or actually what it is, it's the way you host your customers. Just your customer service is spectacular because you love people and you're really good at people. Or actually you're fantastic at marketing. The way you get your offers out, in so many places is what others will find hard to compete with. And I'm not talking about compete on a global scale, in your area. So, there may be somebody operating up in one part of the country who can do what you do, but are they doing it in your area? It's making sure you have that way you stand out for the area you're in.
Oh, I see. And that's so lovely, actually, because for our model, most people, and I would suggest that most people who are here, we literally really I certainly advise it. You want to have your business in one area, obviously for economies of scale. And some people have literally, like I did for 3 years, most of mine were even in one block. So I suppose, so I see what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of looking through, when you scroll through something like booking.com, there's just tends to be a lot of gray. I mean, it's like painful. There's a lot of gray. And then they're always called the same thing. It's like, you know, view, cottage with a view, or like, who cares less what it's called? Like, I couldn't care less where I stay. I don't care what the name of it is, except when I'm trying to find it. I don't care, but everyone just puts that. So so I'm really starting to sort of see these kind of differences that you're talking about, and how you can kind of insert your personality into that there. Okay, I love that.
Yeah, because you'll never be right for everybody. So be really right for some people and build a fan base of that kind of person. You know, appealing just to everybody never works. So
I love it. I love it.
Dare to be different. Dare to be different.
Okay, so let's then jump into, you know, by working with what you've done with people all of this time, you've then, I know, obviously, because I know you really well, you've created something called this business jet engine. So could you sort of explain a little bit more about that and how that can kind of help us? And then I'll be able to sort of give a bit of feedback of my experience with doing that for gosh, a number of years now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of the business jet engine, I spotted there was this common journey that businesses went on as they grew, and realized that in a simple way, there's sort of 7 main areas of business that they have to get right. But in more detail, there's 17 key parts they have to get right. And the idea of putting it against a simple metaphor, even without mechanical experience, you don't have to be a jet engineer to get the metaphor. But basically, I'll talk you through very, very simply the 17 key bits. Right at the heart of every business, most of us know who have worked in a company, know that there's 3 bits you've got to get right. You've got to have a problem you solve for your clients. That's your product, your service, your offering. Then there's your customer service, how you love and look after and care for your clients and customers. And then there's your operations, how you deliver that product or service, you know, which in property might be first the property acquisition, but then you've got it set up, and then you've got to market it, sell it, and get customers through the door. That's all your operations. And most people think that is business when they start out. And that's at the heart of the jet engine. That's the core engine, just because it's the heart of business. But then there you are. You've set yourself up, and it might go really well for a short while because you've got some friends, relatives, contacts who knew you were going to do it. They come in and say, love what you're doing. But 6 months later, you go, shoot, I don't have enough new business coming in. And that's when you realize you've got to have air coming into your engine. That's like the sales and the marketing. So that's when you've got to make sure you have a great way of attracting customers. Then the sales, how you convert those inquiries. Out of the back of your engine, you need happy customers. You know, anyone who wants to build a sustainable business needs happy customers, great reviews, etc. Then you've got to get customer feedback. It's like a feedback loop. It's how you sort of supercharge your engine. Is that feedback lets you know what your customers really value, so you can do more of that. I mean, for example, with my face-to-face clients, I found out through customer feedback they love my coffee. So I made better and better coffee, and it's legendary. You know, any client you speak to, if you ask for a review, or even people who have never seen me, they know they're coming from a meeting, they say, I hear you make great coffee, and they're really excited, and they should be.
He does make great coffee.
Thank you. So getting great feedback lets you know how to market to new clients, but also you've got to be remarketing to existing clients. You know, in service accommodation, if people have come once, don't just go looking for new business, get them coming back, because that's easier than finding someone new who doesn't know you. You've got a warm customer or a hot customer, get them coming back with remarketing to them, and also get referrals. And then there's a final part I think of as kind of long-term market intelligence, where you've got to really understand where your clients are going 1, 3, 5 years from now, how the world is changing, so you can adapt. That's a small. So our business owners now got much better at marketing. They're really busy. They work really hard for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then their accountant says, you made this much profit this year, you owe this much tax. And they go, oh, shoot, I made that much profit. Where's the money in my bank account? There isn't any. And that's when they realize they don't just need an engine with air coming in. They've got to have fuel coming in. That's the money. That's the financing. And getting the fuel in all starts with pricing. If you don't price appropriately and as much as you can at a price your customers still think is great value and will pay for, if you don't charge enough, you'll never make a profit. So you need enough fuel coming into the engine. Out of the back of the engine, you get exhaust. Some people think profit is a dirty word, but it's not. It's absolutely vital. So you have your profit coming out of the back of your engine, and you need profit, especially like a turbocharger. You want to use those exhaust gases to reboot your engine, to power your engine like a turbo does. That's money to reinvest in your business to help it grow. And how do you do all of that? Well, you control it by getting better at your management accounts. So, most people are scared of their numbers. They actually realize if they start simply, the numbers aren't that scary. You just start with simple numbers, but that's another conversation. So now our business owner, our business is going much better. The engine's roaring away. But what's the point of having an engine roaring away in a shed or a warehouse or a hangar? The point's to go somewhere, and you need a wing. And up till now, what that business owner's typically done is they're in a panic going, I need some help, I need someone in my business, or I need to outsource, and they've done it quickly, but they've not got the best. Now, the people are like the wing. Now, if you have an upside down wing, if you had poor people in your business, you'll just grind yourself down into the tarmac. If you've got average people, like a simple plain profile wing, you'll go along the runway using up lots of time, money, and energy, but never take off. With the right profile people, the right profile wing, that's when you get lift and the business takes off. So you've got to have great quality staff, the best you can get for your area, for your industry, and you've got to be good at leadership. Get your HR processes in place, get your leadership right, so you hire, motivate, and manage people to be the very best they can be. It's a real act of love. And if they're not right, it's also having those difficult conversations to make sure they move on, because it's not good for anything. So now we're up in the air, great, but there's a big problem. We're up in the air, you think, fantastic. Actually, it's illegal. You can't just take off in a jet plane and fly anywhere you like. You've got to have plans, and you've got to submit them. You've got to know where you're going. So you need your captain in the cockpit with all his dials. So that's where you have your longer term plans, what you're doing this year in the next 3, what's the 10-year plan? And you've got to have your dials on your dashboard so you know, are you on track? Are all the levels in your business? Have you got fuel? Are you the right altitude? Are you heading in the right direction? Et cetera, et cetera. And now, finally, that's your 17 parts. So basically, with the jet engine idea is once people have got laid out those 17 key parts, they then need to score how good they are for their size business this year. How good are they at each area out of 10? 5 being just good enough, 10 exceptional, 0 totally neglected. That then allows them to decide where they're weak or strong. And we've suddenly got a clear picture, where am I? And we can see our business as a system. What we do next is maybe another a carry-on conversation. But Emma, let me let you come in now.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So I think was really interesting when I first came to you, that, inherently each of us in our own head, I think, has a view or a picture of a business and potentially what they need to do, and and that we can bumble along, and that's fine. What I found when we started chatting, and especially when you introduced me to this sort of business jet engine, is I'm not remotely in that, and talking about the wings and the things like that, for me personally, it doesn't necessarily relay, because I'm not that kind of person. But when I actually see, and you put it, and we look at it on the piece of paper, so to speak, it's like, oh, okay, so I've got all these areas that some of them, let's be fair, I hadn't even considered. And certainly things like, management of accounts. And I remember, being told, oh, your business made this much profit, did it? Exactly as you said. Well, where's all that money gone then? So it is really interesting. But what I really like, so Martin's got a book, and he does all these kind of things. But anyway, what I really like about his book and is that there's 2 ways that you can look at it. Because I am incredibly busy, and I'm not saying that I am admitting that there might be some busy fool in there. It's just like run. So I don't really have necessarily time. And what Martin has is there's 2 methods, and one of them is a very quick, like literally jump in, just read a couple of maybe a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs or whatever it is about something, and it's just literally bang, what do I score myself in this one? And it is literally, in my gut, what do I score myself? Bam, bam, bam. And I think that can be done in 1 hour or so. I'm trying to
for now, 3 minutes.
There we
if
go.
You want to be quick, and people starting, as you say, just don't even read up, just for what I know, how good do I think I am, and you'll be about right. Good enough.
Absolutely. So that was amazing for me, because especially when you're at the stage where you are unable to see the wood for the trees, and also you're unable to necessarily see the importance of understanding all these bits. So you really have to have somebody like Martin was for me, to be pushing you and saying, look, you really have got to have this understanding across the board. And it was kind of like, you could really spend hours and hours and hours. And it was like, clearly I'm not going to do that, or I'm going to lie. And to have that opportunity to just jump straight in and look at the business from the quick element. And then given time, when I started to understand how beneficial that was, then I did actually a number of times deep dive and actually give that time aside where I really properly understood what it was that I needed to do for each area, and then I kind of marked myself. So I absolutely love that. Was that kind of, and in fact, funnily enough, I'm now, I don't know if I think I did mention, Martin, that I'm writing a book all
Fantastic.
about, I know, it's a bit scary, but all about helping people find their gold mine area for serviced accommodation. And one of the things I want to do with that is to make it accessible. If you really haven't got time to read the whole book, then what can I do? Boom, 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 to get you through. So was that why you sort of chose to have that sort of two-pronged effect? Because I personally found that really incredible. And actually it enabled me to do it, rather than to be another book that I read and thought, oh gosh, another book that I've read it, wanted to do it, and then never did it.
A whole part of my approach was knowing that small business owners are time poor. There's always more to do than we can ever get to do. So yes, I deliberately designed a system where you can start and literally work through the process in 2 hours maximum if you did the whole process with very little knowledge, because you start with where you're at. Over the years, my clients have got better and better at being more precise with their scoring and going into more detail, and the conversations are more involved because they've learned there's more to those areas. And sometimes they realize they were probably quite over optimistic in how well they'd scored themselves in certain areas, but that's fine. We got started. And one of my mottos is, it's better to have a plan than no plan. It's better to have a draft plan, an average plan, than no plan. So yes, where you're at is good enough, and using your basic knowledge, I deliberately did it so yes, you can start simply and just score yourself with the knowledge you've got. But what you'll realize, as you've said, there'll be areas where you go, management accounts, actually I know very little about that. Or like some people we know, Emma, they're all over it, go, no, actually I'm pretty damn good. What I'm not good at actually is my marketing, or I don't sell back to customers, or there's some other bit that's missing. So yes, generally as a relative, when you score those 19 parts on a diagram, you realize where the weak spots are. And then the next thing that happens is you realize that not everything's equal. You start to see the cause and effect relationships, because once you've scored your diagram, the thing I love to ask, my favorite question, is if you only fixed, changed, improved one score this year, which would you change? And then people have to really look and say, actually, if I can only have one, what's going to have the biggest knock-on effect? And that's when we have the real power. This is why I go back to saying, what's the terrain? Is your goal worth setting? Because if actually there's just one thing you could do, which might be, say, put up your prices, because actually you've got quite a lot of clients coming through. You're just not charging enough to ever make a profit, or enough profit. Or actually you've got quite a few clients coming through, but you're spending too much time trying to get new clients. What I should do is spend my time remarketing to my existing client base to come back, or to refer their friends. That would be have more impact. There's ways when you look at that diagram and go, if I just did one thing and really got that right this year, it focuses the mind.
So that's amazing. So what we're actually saying, isn't it, that we could already have the goal within our business. It just might be that we tweak one specific thing, and then suddenly it's all done. But what we tend to do is, like we were talking about, we tend to do the bits that we're good at, and we keep pushing at the bits we're good at. And actually, let's say we just took on a better, good bookkeeper, or a fantastic accountant, or, whatever that is. It might be a switch, or we bring in something like Profit First or by Michael McAllowitz, that kind of thing. It could be that you don't have this year of absolute hard slog, almost running up the wrong tree. It could already be there.
Yeah. You know that phrase, work smarter, not harder? It used to drive me absolutely nuts, because I knew I was working too hard, but I didn't know how to work smart. It's like, I would if I knew how to do this differently. And that's why I come back to work smart now. You've got to understand the terrain, the system you're in at a simple basic level, and then know where you're at. And then one of my favorite rules I live by, the 80-20 rule. And if any of the listeners don't know it, look it up. But basically it means not everything in life is equal, unfortunately. But we can use that for advantage, because what it means is that there are some things we can put effort into. The 80-20 is that 20% of what we do creates 80% of the results we want. Or 80% of what we're doing is a waste of time, because it's only delivering 20% of what we need. So the idea is, if something we can do that's quite simple and small will have a big knock-on effect, put your effort there. So by working smarter, by going, if there's one thing that would really make the biggest difference, let me get that right this year. And then I like to push my clients and go, okay, let's not make it that easy. If there were 2 things, and if there were 3 things, and that's where we get a little bit more involved in our goal setting. But essentially, you just then go, okay, what's the second thing that I would do next? What's the third? And there's more and more sophisticated ways of working with that.
Amazing. And actually, just going back to a comment that you made earlier, is that very, very early on, and I if you haven't read it, you must. I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And one of the key elements of successful people is something that he calls masterminding, and that might be, and inherently we all know it, don't we? When we try and think of ideas ourselves, we do come up with stuff, but when you talk with even just one other person, you seem to get sort of exponentially more ideas. And then if you're in a big group, it's like, wow, we're really, really creating things. And you might know your business inside out, but actually having others around. And so that's kind of where we met very, very first time, wasn't it? We were both initially in a sort of a masterminding type group, and then eventually you started doing your own masterminding groups, and I was a participant of that. But when you said and mentioned about the kind of numbers side of things, so I'm this kind of big ideas person, and numbers are literally the area of weakness, so to speak, that I have to really concentrate on, and it's a constant thing. But what was really amazing is coming into that kind of masterminding type group. And so this particular person that Martin and I are talking about I remember sitting in this first meeting with him, and him saying, well, I'm growing, and I probably, and I do need an extra member of staff. And Martin sort of said, oh, well, can you afford it? And he said, yes, I've got this, this, and this, and we've made this much profit, and we've done this. And I looked at him, my mouth hit the floor, and I was like, what? Like, I have and he had such a detailed approach. Now, obviously, there were other areas that he wasn't so strong in, but I just had this, I still just emulate him. He is absolutely incredible. And so, I find that kind of masterminding sort of element quite interesting. I know I've sort of jumped a bit there, but why do you have that sort of model within because I know as the business jet engine, you also have it as private coaching, but you also have it in this mastermind. What kind of drove you towards that?
Well, exactly what you're saying. There's 2 reasons. One, actually, it's a lower price point because you've got more people in the group. So one, it's to make it affordable for those that couldn't afford the Rolls-Royce VIP service, which is my one-to-one coaching. But there is such a power to a mastermind group, because not only do you get kind of expert guidance, and a structured approach, hopefully, if it's the right mastermind group. But it is simply the power, the expertise you have in a room. And you also have different people, as you say, with different strengths and weaknesses who are ahead of you and some who are behind you. Those who are behind you can help up to where you're at. Those who are ahead, they inspire. They inspire you to take on board some of the things they're doing so well. And the chap we talked about, you should see some of his other business KPIs we have in place now. It's not just the numbers. He's all over his tracking his business progress and knowing what delivers what. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, he's doing so well.
I mean, he is incredibly inspiring, but also makes you think, oh, I've got so much more to achieve. I'm so behind. But yeah, no, I absolutely love that. Okay, so if I'm just thinking through your process, I know I've done it a number of times. So I've then got, a picture, I've got numbers, and I have a lot of kind of like very low numbers and not many sort of tens. There'll be areas where I'll have some 8s to 10s and things like that. So how, I know you said that look at kind of one key area, but obviously a lot of us, especially when we're sort of quite early on in our business, there'll be a lot of areas that are much lower, and especially when it comes down to things like bringing on staff and all of those kind of things, because we find certainly in serviced accommodation a lot of people might have 1 unit, 3 units, 4 units, but once they get to 5, 6 units they're starting to get quite overwhelmed, especially if they've got another job, their own job as well. How do they then make the decision of which one, how is it possible to know which is the one that you need to work on and then what to do about it, sort of thing?
Well, that's the beauty of when you look at this sort of system, when it's a diagram with numbers on it, and say the person in the situation you're describing, that's a tipping point where they can't do it all themselves, and then they look at their staff score and go, well, it's me, I'm doing a great job, I'm an 8, but there aren't enough of us. That then almost becomes my first priority of this year, is actually I need to build my team. I need to find the people to support me in growing, because I simply cannot go further. So that becomes your first goal. and what I would do next with that goal is go, okay, let's give that goal a title, a what and a why, which might be something like find 2 extra team members to help deliver the long-term plan. That's the what and the why. And then I'd have a couple of simple sub-goals, 1, 2 or 3 sub-goals, which might be, research who's available, interview and hire, or it might be hire, develop, train. Whatever it is, so they're simple goals. And if they then look at the 3 areas that they've chosen, their 1, 2 and 3 priorities, do the same thing with each. So you've just got a very simple written list of headings, my first priority, my second priority, my third, and then some simple sub-goals. So it's nothing scary. So what my clients end up with for the year ahead is 9 sub-goals. And once you've got those 9 sub-goals, you can look at those and go, actually, which of those 9 sub-goals do I really need to do first? It's not always the first one you thought it was. You might go, actually, to achieve my top goal, actually, I need to do one of these other sub-goals first. So I normally say choose just 3 of your sub-goals to do first, second, and third. Get on with those. So basically, you're putting to the back of your mind all those other goals going, I know I'm going to get to those later. Otherwise, we're too stressed going, I have to do all of this all at once now. And that's when we become crazy. We either get completely overwhelmed and burn out, or we get confused and lose focus. So it's just trying to make it manageable so people can pick things off one at a time. And when they've got a sub-goal, they can then go, oh, let's try and make that a smarter goal. Let's break it down a bit. Let's go into what do I actually have to do to achieve this goal in the next week, 2 weeks, month, whatever time frame seems right for that. So it's just making things manageable and simple, so they're not scary.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So going back to what we'd originally said, when we've got somebody with this kind of 10K goal or whatever, and they're now getting along the way, and let's say they've got six and 6 properties, and it's going pretty well. It might be that all they're concentrating on is I don't know, the good part, but not checking along the way what is that what we're sort of saying? We're not checking along their way what is working, and how actually if we have a couple of times a year, whether it's every 3 months, every 6 months, or whatever it is, just to check in, and actually enable us to funnel down. And when you look at something so clearly laid out on a piece of paper, it's kind of like you said earlier, it's like, oh wow, I can see I'm a busy fool, you know, just literally looking to get more properties, whereas actually I'm not maximizing the pricing, or I'm not maximizing getting them coming back to me. And actually maybe it's better to solidify what I've got and maximize what I've got before I then grow. So that kind of where we're at when we've got that 10K.
Absolutely, which could mean actually I need to get someone to help me do it, or as you say, increase my prices or improve my marketing, or actually I've got to learn to do management accounts so I know I'm actually making a profit from all this effort, you know, because what a waste if we're doing all of this work. And that's often one of the realizations people is to look at how hard they're working and go, actually I really don't know whether I'm making a decent profit, or I never put any aside. I don't save my corporation tax, I don't put my VAT aside. You know, sometimes getting those things organized is the top priority.
Yeah.
So yes, it's exactly what you said. It's choosing the right thing that will get you there one step at a time. And if I can just add, I mean, if you're a big corporation, to sit down at the start of the year and write a big corporate plan with all the details, you know, may be possible, but most small business owners, they don't have the time or the expertise to do that. And if they've spent a month writing their plan for the year, they've wasted too much time. The whole beauty here is you pick things off as you get to them. So it's going from big picture to detail, big picture, break it down into details, big picture, break it down into details, one step at a time, bit at a time. You're not trying to take off more than you can chew, because it's, you know, it could scare the life out of you.
Absolutely. Now I'm just going to add up, guys, and we've only got about 15 minutes left now. I've got loads more questions to ask Martin, but if you did want to come up or ask any questions, then do raise your hand. I'm actually on Club Deck, so I'm presuming something might crop up if you put your hand up. So if somebody puts their hand up and I don't see, then I can see the room chat. But if anyone's got any questions, do feel free to pop them in the chat, or raise your hand and jump up, and yeah, we can help you as well. But so going back to now, we've got this kind of understanding, we've looked at various areas, and let's say we're looking at staff, and I know that I have really had my mind completely open when talking through staff recruitment with you, because I just literally was kind of like, yeah, I just hire a member of staff. And in fairness, one of the members that I'm thinking about when I very first, certainly in my serviced accommodation, I was really lucky with that particular person, and she stayed with me for over, I think, about 18 months, and it was all pretty much okay. And then I actually hired a few others, and I could see that it wasn't as good. And then when I look back over my history of when I've been in the corporate world, I can really see that I just had no idea. I was told, go and hire some staff, and I just literally have a quick look at their CV. What does that really tell me? And then I'd meet them and they seemed perfectly nice. And then, you know, they start and it's a bit like, well, why? They're not really kind of doing exactly what I want. So do you mind? Because it has been really revolutionary for me. And as most of you know, I help people find virtual assistants from the Philippines. I've got a recruitment company. And what we have implemented is actually, Martin's on my website, and we give out information to really help people understand what it is that you require. Do you mind sort of sharing it a bit? Because it's an absolute gem about sort of hiring staff and how you kind of advise on that.
Absolutely, a pleasure. I mean, most people, when they hire, the traditional process is they kind of write down the skills they need, and then they do an interview, which is asking questions, and then they hire them and hope it's going to work out. And 50-50, it might or it might not. I mean, you know, basically, if you've interviewed someone with questions, all you've really learned is they can answer questions. And if you're hiring someone who's good at, that's all you need them to do, that doesn't tell you enough. So I try and take things a lot further. And I break it into, there's three main areas that you need to understand what you want. One is the skill set, the tech know-how for the job. The second is the drive, the motivation, the attitude. I call this CDR. So the first C is competence. Then the second, drive, motivation, attitude, character qualities. You've got to write down all the mission critical things, your ideal. The third is the relationships, the R, the people skills, communication skills, teamwork skills that you are going to need. And make sure you've got at least 3 to 5 bullet points for each area. And then once you've kind of created your list, you then need to simply test for those things as you to take people through the interview process, the hiring process. And it's not by asking them a question, because like I've said, questions have a very limited value. If you need someone who's great at process, make it a slightly tricky process. Say, actually, apply. What I want is your CV on one sheet of A4, 11-point Adobe Caslon typeface. And I want a black and white, you can't do this now, but back in the day, I want a black and white photograph, 3 by 2 centimeters, 2 millimeters from the left-hand corner. And most people go, you don't need that. I'll send what I always send. But if you want someone who will follow your instructions to the letter, there'll be one person who will go, that's my job, and they'll send that. There's lots of ways of testing, so you've got to think creatively. And I do have a sort of a downloadable resource that people can go into more detail about this. But it's about testing. It's like if you're going to buy a second-hand car, you don't buy it based on what the salesman tells you and the tech spec in the window. You take it for a test drive. So the key principle here is if you're hiring, you've got to test drive people in those 3 key areas that matter to you: their technical competence, their driver motivation, and their people skill. Just another example, driver motivation, someone will go the extra mile. Have the interview at 6 in the morning, at 9 or 9, or at the weekend, and see who goes, actually, that doesn't work for me, or who goes, yep, I'll be there. It starts to tell you a lot.
Yeah, that is tremendous, actually, because I work with a company, and the team are incredible. They're so dedicated, and they'll work weekends. I mean, obviously they have other days off, but I kind of see them and think, wow, imagine having people that are so dedicated to the kind of cause. You can almost sort of chop them in half, and the name of the business is written across them. I mean, that is quite tremendous, and it's that can't be sort of that sort of easy, so to speak. So how often would you kind of advise people to have that time to sort of sit down and work and sort of look on their business and have a look at that? And would it be a kind of a deep dive each time if you can, or is it kind of like the one that I really like, which is a quick jump in and have a quick look?
Do you mean for the goal setting for a jet engine?
Yeah,
process?
so when you're really wanting to look at your business, say for instance, I've got some goals at the moment. I'm sure everyone here has got some goals. And then as it often does, doesn't it? Well, some people already have given up on their goals, but hopefully not everyone. How many times a year do you think we should come back to this? How do you kind of incorporate that kind of accountability?
Yeah, fantastic question. Minimum once a year. I tend to sort of January or September is a great time when clients tend to kind of go, I want to review my plans. So typically it's a yearly process to set the main goals. But what I do with clients is at least monthly or every other couple of months, when we're always checking in, how are you getting on with the goals? But then we refer back and go, from that plan I've laid out of 10, how far have I got with those subtasks? So we get all of them up to about an 8. Very rarely do we need it to be a 10. Most things don't need to be perfect. 1 or 2 things do. We need to know which need to be perfect, but most need to be good enough, because our business is going to keep evolving and growing. So don't over deliver on something that's good enough at an 8. So generally, I'll constantly be tracking. With clients, I tend to see them monthly, but if it's your own business, be checking weekly, fortnightly, where am I with my goals? Until you have most of them ticked off. And that will often take 6 months to a year. With bigger companies, it could take them 2 years to complete a very comprehensive set of goals. But I would say probably quarterly or every 6 months, check your scores to go, actually, it's nice to kind of know you're ticking off your tasks. It has improved your scores. It's motivating. So probably quarterly, you're going back to the diagram scores, but at least monthly, if not fortnightly, look at the subtasks going, how far have I moved these along? But it should be forming your daily to-do list.
And what do you find if let's say, you know, people have got to the end of the first month and they're just not really, they haven't made any inroads at all, that kind of typical thing. It's kind of like, and I used to have it a lot. You know, you'd get at the end of, sometimes I've had years where I get to the end of the year and think, God, I'd forgotten I even had that goal. What would people do if they get to the end of the month and it's like, I really haven't made these two things that I've looked at, I've literally not made any inroads? What might we sort of think about doing at that stage?
Well, a lot of this is about time management and how you prioritize things. And the thing about strategic goals, and typically the jet engine forces you to look at strategic goals, which aren't small incremental improvements. Strategic goals take time, money, and energy that's hard to find, like writing your book. You don't suddenly have all the time available to write a book. Most people don't, most of us don't. That's going to take carving out big chunks. So what I tend to suggest for people, that the simplest tip I've got is the 3 notes, the 3 tasks on a post-it note. This is to focus your day. And what I normally reckon in a day is that we can get 3 chunky bits of work done, which are kind of 40-minute, an hour, hour and a half, possibly 2 hours sort of tasks. Any more than that, you know, the day's gone anyway. So I tend to, on a post-it, put the 3 most important things that I might do. Say, today, this is one of those tasks. You know, this is one of those 3 things. So I have those, and then I have the 3 nice to haves, things that they're those 15-minute, 10-minute calls that move things on hugely, that email you must send that will move things on. I've then got a pile of other stuff I've got to clear, tons of emails, etc., etc. So essentially, I've got 3 really mission critical things and 3 nice to haves that move my business on the most. And through the day, I tick those off. And my whole day is structured around getting those done. And if day after day I'm not getting to any of those, I've really got to look at how am I earmarking time. And it's putting that time in the diary for those tasks to go, this is when I will do those. So if you've got a really big task, like writing a book, I wouldn't just put book writing, 40 minutes. I would name the task as what's the little bit of the book I'm going to put the outline. I'm going to put some bullet points, or I'm going to finalize a section. And I've got to get it done in 40 minutes. When I wrote my book, I had, you know, all those sections laid out, and I'd go, okay, today I've got to get this section written. I'll throw down as much as I can, and then I'll move on tomorrow to the next bit, because I know I've limited it to a certain time.
Wow.
That's another conversation.
Oh my gosh, yeah, don't get me.
But it is about earmarking time, going, actually, in the 40 minutes in and out, I've got to get this done as best I can. And if they're really big tasks, we break it down. What's the bit of that big task I'm going to do in 40 minutes to an hour today? That's how we move those big tasks on. Fantastic. Bite sizes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're literally just coming to the final few minutes here. So I know, you know, having you know, worked with you and seen you along the way and the way you're going. So I love your, you know, the approach that you take. It is different to others. So I think, you know, coaching and mentoring and they all have their place. But what I really like is getting very specific, because I think sometimes we just kind of like you said earlier, going back to, is your goal worth setting? I mean, is it really worth setting if you don't really know how to get there and the routes to take? So could you let us know what kind of resources you have, what you do, give you a little bit of a big up, and let us know, you know, if somebody wanted to get help, what they might do to, you know, to have what's your offering, I suppose.
Yes, well, let's start at the simplest level. Is my book on Amazon, The Business Jet Engine, and it's all in there, you know, which is highly affordable, and it's packed with thousands of ideas and all this information. The second thing is I am launching, well, actually, there's some free resources on my website, businessjetengine.co.uk, and if people go to the free tools, they'll find they can download the jet engine and do a simple diagnostic that we talked about, that map of the 17 key parts of a business. There's also a reminder of the CDR expert hiring process. So there's some more information there. But what I am doing, which I'm extremely excited about, there's obviously my premium one-to-one coaching service, but I'm launching Jet Club, which is a mastermind group online. So that we are literally opening the doors to waitlist members next Monday. And from the website, if people look for Jet Club, they will be able to join the waitlist, so they'll be first to know. And then later throughout the week, we will be opening the doors to other people who want to join, but we're restricting it to 20 founding members. So that's really exciting. And they're going to be able to lock in a 50% discount on the full membership when we go to a full membership later on. So it's a sort of lifetime locked in 50% discount.
Amazing. And what does that kind of look like then, this kind of online thing?
Well, it's going to be a mastermind group where we will meet roughly fortnightly, and we will have a number of kind of main sessions through the year. There'll be 4 meetings where we look at the business model that we talked about, make sure people have their business model right, and then also resetting the business jet engine, doing that basic yearly plan. So twice a year they can look at the yearly plan, twice a year they can look at getting their business model right. Then the interim meetings, which will be fortnightly, will have a meeting focused on either their business model or their business jet engine priorities, where they're at, how they're getting on with that, where they're stuck. And then the other meeting of the month will be about just general business challenges. They're Q&A meetings where we can discuss what they're stuck with and try and unlock those. And then, of course, there'll be a forum. There'll be a Facebook group forum where they can exchange ideas, exchange challenges, get to know each other. That's their support group, because we all know there's such a power in having a support group, not just for the intellectual challenges, the business challenges, but the emotional support. There are times that we all need that, and we've all seen people shout in a mastermind group, and the group is there to hold them, and it makes so much difference.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. How much is that, Martin?
Well, don't tell anybody yet, because it's not on general release, but just between you and me and anybody listening, the founding members, is going to be £50 a month.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, that's incredibly affordable.
It's ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure that's going to go up after that. I'm quite certain. Look, I can see we've literally run over, but Gemma has just put a question in there. If you kind of, suffer from kind of being able to struggle with focus, have you got kind of any tips on how you might be able to help with that?
I won't pretend that is my expertise. So I would love to say I know, and I'm afraid I don't. And it really just depends how you work best. And if I knew a bit more, maybe I could make some suggestions. But I'm afraid I'm not the expert in that. So I can probably not answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish I could.
But I think with all these things, if you've got a plan and you've got things in place and you understand yourself, I suppose if we can break things down into the way that we've been talking about, that sounds like that might be a start to help get that focus there as well. So oh, Martin, I can't believe that we've managed. I mean, I presume people have heard us on the live. Fingers crossed. And thank you. This is a number one, I think, for both of us to be on Clubhouse and to be on doing a Facebook live, and it's been absolutely brilliant. I so appreciate you coming and helping us make this leap into 2023 and help people have maybe a chance to get that focus and understand that you might have a goal, but exactly what is the quickest, fastest, smartest way, I suppose, of absolutely getting there and not getting to the end of the year or 3 months down the line and just feeling quite sort of sad and neglected and I still haven't hit it or whatever. So I really appreciate that. So yeah, just to let everyone know that I'll be back again next week on Clubhouse. Next week it's property networking. I alternate between serviced accommodation and property networking. So if you've got anything that you want to chat about or share next week, then please do come Monday at noon. But Martin, I'd really appreciate any just sort of closing comments before we shut up for the day.
Mainly just keep breaking it down into small chunks. That's my big tip. Go from big picture, break it down into bite-sized chunks, and just keep going. Persist. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Martin, thank you. I so appreciate your time and everything that you do. It's certainly made a massive change to my business and moving myself forward. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, we'll catch up very soon.
Fantastic. My pleasure.
All right. Take care, guys. See you all next week. Thanks so much.